This experimental mulch hasn't done that well, really. It was an old blanket on the ground with different mulches on top, and the blanket has just let the creeping buttercup grow through. So I'm going to cover this area with polythene to help kill off the creeping buttercup. And whilst it's doing that, I thought I'd plant potatoes here through the polythene to make the most of this space. The mulches that I have here are sheep stags, some compost from the local council called Merlin's Magic. This that I'm standing on now is the poo of alpaca. And here's wood chip, which I'm not going to put potatoes in. That's under the tree, and I'm going to use that for something else. This plastic sheet came with a delivery, so it's pre-used, and this is what I'm going to use as the mulch. It's wider than the little bed that I made, so I'm going to expand the bed a bit underneath this tree. I've got the potatoes, which are a blight-resistant early main crop, some stones for holding the polythene down, sheep stags and compost for making this bed. Oh, and a knife to cut the polythene. To cover this area, I've needed 2 sheets of the polythene, and I'm going to tuck it at the top around the daffodils. I'm putting the potatoes out in rows across this little bed, and this is the last row, and I noticed that I've got some more space, so I'm going to put a different variety here too. I've put the potatoes in rows, roughly 25 centimetres apart. Each row is just over 30 centimetres from the other, except for the last row where there are 6 potatoes because there was a spare one and it would be a shame not to use it. I'm putting a mound of compost on top of each potato in the rows so that it's got some compost to grow in. It's about 2 handfuls of compost per potato. All of the potatoes now have a little mound of compost on top. This will also make it a lot easier when I put the polythene over, because I'll be able to check where the mounds are and I'll know where to make the holes. Now I'm going to put some sheep stags on the ground where it's grassy, because I've got them and I'm experimenting with how they can be used. That bit can be skipped, or you could use cardboard if you wanted, or more compost. Now I'm going to cover the bed with the polythene. A bit tricky with this tree here. The polythene overlaps in the middle to make sure that there's no gaps, and then I'm going to secure it with stones. We have an awful lot of stones here. I've covered the bed with polythene, and now I'm going to make holes with my pocket knife for the potatoes to grow through. You can just feel the surface and see where the potatoes grow, and then carefully cut a cross shape through the hole. The bed is finished, just in time really, because it's starting to cloud over. We're due a really heavy downpour. I've cut all the holes, put plenty of stones on, because I'm on a Welsh hillside, so we don't want the polythene to blow away. The potatoes should get watered by rain going through the holes. If you're concerned that it's too dry underneath, then you can always water through the holes too. And later on, if it seems that the potatoes need a little bit more room, again, it's ever so simple, just to make the holes a little bit bigger. Years ago, I set up an almost instant kitchen garden at the Hadspun estate, which is now the Newt in Somerset. If you ever go there, the garden I made is completely gone. It's in the area, the parabola, which is now full of apple trees. Anyway, I had weedy grass, cardboard down, put the potatoes on the cardboard, did little mounds of compost and polythene just like this, and it grew fine. And that later on, when I harvested it, that bed was clean of weeds. It was one way of growing potatoes using less compost. This bed has used about 60 litres of compost for all these potatoes, so it's a lot less than if I'd put them in grow bags or if I'd made an instant bed. This bed used about 60 litres of compost in the mounds on the potatoes for 7 rows of potatoes. It's a lot less than if I'd made a more traditional raised bed in this space. When it's time to remove the polythene, I'm going to keep this rolled up. It could be useful for growing things through later on when I'm clearing another area in the garden. Don't like wasting anything at all, really. Potential problems: slugs, obviously, they like to live under polythene, and also rodents sometimes like to come and live underneath polythene, but it's certainly one way of effectively making a new bed with fewer resources and getting a harvest of food. If you're wondering what this is down here, that's all the framework for the fruit cage that we'll be putting up this spring. It's very solid fruit cage made in a similar way to a polytunnel, except it will be covered in metal mesh to keep the squirrels and birds off our soft fruit here.